recent push for solar farms threatens land that is uniquely rich for crops and livestock, with energy outputs inferior to other sources such as coal, natural gas, and oil. What's your position on industrial solar farms taking thousands of acres of prime farmland out of production for decades, possibly forever, in Indiana's 9th District?
I am not in favor of reducing the farmland in Indiana at all. Within the 9th Congressional District, in 71 we don't have a lot of farms in Clarksville and Jeffersonville, but as a Hoosier, I'm not in favor of that. It is an issue. The long-term viability of some of these solar farms is questionable. What sort of leakage or runoff would occur from them, or if there's damage, what sort of natural environmental hazard would occur is unknown at this stage. I have spoken with all of the governor candidates except for one, and have put forth a plan that I believe would be a better solution as far as power generation in the state of Indiana. We have the technology as Americans to replace some of the furloughed or decommissioned coal plants in Indiana and replace them with nuclear power plants. You're not changing the majority of the hardware there, you're just replacing the heat source from a coal-powered source to a nuclear source. And we can use the same technology that Japan uses in its nuclear reactors, which the United States developed in the 1950s, but unfortunately isn't used in the majority of nuclear plants in the United States. Japan, because it is an island country, has no natural uranium resources, has to import every gram of uranium that comes in. So they use a refining process and a reuse process where they reuse the spent fuel continuously until it's almost completely expended. And instead of in the single pass-through methodology that is used in most American nuclear plants, where the radioactive results have a half-life of approximately 20,000 years, the waste that comes out of Japanese plants has a half-life of 200 years. So they're getting a much more efficient use of the resources they're putting in, so our uranium would last longer, and we'll be able to generate more electricity in Indiana. This also will help us avoid the brain drain issue we have in Indiana. We have some of the best universities in the entire country in Indiana and Purdue University, and we have graduates leaving these universities who can't find high-paying, high-tech jobs in Indiana, and so they move to other states. By creating this large amount, by rehabilitating, for lack of better terminology, these old coal plants and changing them to nuclear power, we will have a greener future. We'll have a larger amount of electricity in general, so Indiana will be an energy producing state, which means we can sell our excess energy to our neighboring states, and we'll have high-paying, high-tech, quality jobs across the state, which will benefit everyone.
Well, I'm sure that we all open our electric bills every month, whether we open them in an email or physically open them. And you can see the results of the success of solar farms. And I say that tongue-in-cheek because we all know that our utility costs are skyrocketing to where it's essentially making all of us more poor. And here's another story. Right? My wife loves this show from the 1980s called Dallas. Okay, and you guys might remember it, you might not. But there was a particular episode where I think his name is Patrick Ewing, the younger brother, the non-JR character, was almost bankrupting Ewing Oil to purchase, get it, wait for it, solar panels. He was going to get into the solar business, okay? This was 1982, okay? 40 some odd years ago, right? And here we are still trying to create something that doesn't exist. And that is a solar panel that can substitute for coal, natural gas, or nuclear. And it doesn't work. I'm not going to say it's never going to work, but with the current technology, no matter how efficient you make it, on an industrial, nationwide scale, it will not work. If you want to put it on your garage to run your freezer, great, but it's not going to generate what's needed for an entire society to survive.
I'm not for it. Matter of fact, I haven't said anything about my wife, Kim, who's also a commercial real estate broker. Kim serves on the Board of Zoning Appeals for Clark County. She voted against that initiative or that came before the board. It was 5-0. No, I'm not for solar farms. My concern is not so much immediate as it is long run. What happens when those farms are abandoned? When we have just acres of solar panels that are unattended? Yes, I'm concerned about any possibility that they would inhibit farming or agriculture. So at this point, I think there's a lot of questions to be answered before we could say yes to that, those solar farms. But do I believe in clean and green energy? Absolutely. But I'm not on the left side of that. There's some far left people that have some incredible views that are very harmful to our economy. I believe that we need to do things in an educated way, that we look at the harm that these kind of things can produce for our environment. Our environment's important. We have poisoned our environment for many, many years. I understand this being in the commercial real estate business. One thing I've understood about commercial real estate that's different at one time I sold homes, is that one of the first questions that's asked about that is environmental issue. It's called a phase 1 environmental study. What are the problems with that site? Is there any cleanup needed? Has there anything that has been done adversely to affect that property? And so I'm very much aware of the environment and the need for clean energy and a clean and safe environment. And when I say that, I think more about my grandchildren. What are we going to leave behind for them? We need to leave something that's clean and safe, but we need to have energy to do that.
Like you said, I'm all for my farmlands, so if they're going to take farmland away to make solar farms for industrial, I'm against it. But if the farmer had solar energy to help the farmer out, then I would be for it. As long as he didn't take a lot of his land up. That would help the offset of the farmer's cost for energy.
So this was one of the questions I thought would come up. I kind of feel, I'm not sure where all that information in your question came from. So I kind of feel like some of that is coming from one perspective, because, in the research that I've done, I mean, there's pluses and minuses with everything. Yeah, I think there are some solar farms up in northern Indiana. I can't recall the counties right offhand, but I think in that they weren't using choice farmland. They're using, Indiana is a very farm state. We have a lot of land that's been really overworked. So it's my understanding that a lot of these solar farms target, farmland that is not really usable. And this may or may not apply to this situation, but in just kind of looking this up, there's options out there to farm and have the solar panels together. I mean, literally together. There's some where the solar panels are fences, or there's some where the solar panels are kind of tilted this way and you have crops growing in between, which, something like that, I think would obviously be better in the situation that you're talking about, where you do have fertile land, or you need both. And so kind of working together to make that happen. But there are negatives. So even if it's not, the farmland that they're using, there's, solar panels can help damage the environment by like deforestation. They can affect the habitats of, animals to the area, native animals, but also they can bring some good clean energy down the road. But it doesn't necessarily start that way, because you still have to produce the solar panels, and those can create byproducts as well. So I feel like solar panels, just like anything else, a new idea to the area, to Clark County, is something that would really need to be looked into by, community members and builders and all those, invested in really kind of weighing the pluses and minuses, because it's not necessarily a Democrat or Republican thing. It's just really trying to bring together the best information and helping to educate people including legislators, potential legislators, people that are currently in office, and the members of the community, and farmers too, because this could be a win-win for some farmers. There are farmers that are happy. Farming is not an easy thing. There's not a lot of money, right? You're not getting a lot more money for the food that you're producing. But as we were talking about property taxes earlier, property taxes are continuing to go up. So, there's different people that I think this can benefit, and depending on how it's done.
I think there's a big difference between a farmer deciding that they're going to invest in solar technology on their farm. There's a big difference between that and some progressive company out of California taking our farmland, whose money might actually be coming from a foreign nation. So I think that there's a big distinction there, and we have to do what we can to fight back against the latter, or of the two situations. But if a farmer wants to do what wants to invest the money, I don't think we have the right to tell them not to. But if they're just leasing it out to some progressive company, I don't support that.